The morning sun cast long shadows across the parade ground of the Galactic Military Academy. General Kexfora stood tall, his four arms clasped behind his back, as he looked at the group of human cadets standing before him. The morning light reflected off his silvery scales, making them shimmer like polished metal. "Cadets," he said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic common, "you stand before the most challenging survival course in the known galaxy." He gestured with one of his lower arms toward the massive environmental dome that rose behind him like a small moon. For 300 years, this course has tested the finest warriors from 1,000 worlds. The fastest completion time was 312 standard days. In the front row, Cadet Hejin kept her face carefully blank, though her dark eyes studied the dome with clear interest. Next to her, Cadet Jaho shifted his weight slightly, the only sign of his growing excitement. They were part of the first group of human cadets ever admitted to the Academy's Advanced Training Division. The general continued his speech, unaware of the subtle changes in his audience's posture. "Inside this dome, you will face conditions that would kill most beings in minutes. Temperatures range from -100 to +200 degrees. The atmosphere is toxic. The local wildlife considers most species a delicacy." He paused for effect. "No one will think less of you if you choose to withdraw now." Heijin glanced at the other alien cadets standing to their left. The tall, willowy Arxan cadets were trembling slightly, their leaf-like skin rustling in fear. The rock-like Petroids had pulled their crystalline limbs closer to their bodies. Even the normally confident warrior caste Zenthar looked uncomfortable, their spines dulled with worry. "Sir," Heijin said, raising her hand. Her voice was clear and steady. "What exactly makes the atmosphere toxic?" General Kexfora blinked his three eyes in sequence, surprised by the question. "The air contains high levels of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen, with trace amounts off." "Oh," Jaiho interrupted, then quickly added, "Sorry, sir, but that's just like Earth's atmosphere, except for the ratios." The general's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of confusion that the humans had learned to recognize during their basic training. "Earth, your homeworld." He pulled out a data pad with one of his upper arms and quickly scrolled through it. "Ah yes, classified as Deathworld Category 12. But surely you don't mean to suggest." "Sir," Heijin said politely, "those temperature ranges are similar to what we experience between our winters and summers. And about the wildlife." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We have training in dealing with predators." The other alien cadets had turned to stare at the humans. The Arxan nearest to them had moved several steps away, their leaves now trembling for a different reason. General Kexfora looked down at his data pad again, his scales shifting through several colors rapidly. "I see here that your species evolved on a planet with multiple apex predators." "Yes, sir," Jaiho answered. "We had to learn to outsmart things that wanted to eat us. It's kind of our specialty." The general's translator made a strange sound as it tried to process his response. He quickly composed himself and continued with the briefing. "Very well. The course is divided into 12 sectors, each with its own unique challenges. You must establish a base camp in each sector and survive there for at least 20 standard days before moving to the next sector. Your first task is tow." "Sir," Hejin interrupted again, drawing a few gasps from the alien cadets. "Are we allowed to move between sectors at will if we meet the survival requirements?" "Technically, yes," the general replied, "but no one has ever." "And sir," Jaiho added, "are we allowed to help each other? Work in teams?" "Yes, but—" "Perfect," Heijin said, turning to Jaiho with a smile. "Just like that summer survival course in the Rockies." Jaiho grinned back. "Except this time, we don't have to worry about bears." General Kexfora's scales had settled on a pale yellow color that the humans hadn't seen before. He cleared his throat, a universal gesture he had picked up from working with various species. The course will begin in 1 standard hour. You will be provided with basic survival gear approved by the Academy Council. Remember, there is no shame in. Sir, He-Jin said one last time. Could we start now? We're already geared up. She patted the standard issue survival pack on her back, which she and Ji-Ho had modified the night before based on their Earth training. The general's scales shifted through so many colors that his skin looked like an aurora. The other alien cadets were now watching the exchange with a mixture of horror and fascination. Finally, he spoke, his translator struggling to keep up with his rapid clicks and whistles. You want to start early? Yes, sir, Ji-Ho replied cheerfully. No point in waiting around. The sooner we start, the sooner we finish. General Kexfora stared at them for a long moment. In all his years running the Advanced Training Division, no cadet had ever asked to start the survival course early. Most needed the hour to make peace with their possible death. He looked at his data pad one more time, rereading the classification of Earth as a death world. Perhaps, he thought, we should have paid more attention to that classification. Very well, he said finally. You may enter the dome now. May the great cosmic force be with you. He-Jin and Ji-Ho saluted sharply, then turned and walked toward the dome's entrance. Behind them, they could hear the general quickly calling for additional monitoring staff and medical teams to be put on standby. The other alien cadets watched them go, their various appendages and sensory organs conveying a mixture of respect and concern. As they reached the massive airlock that served as the dome's entrance, Ji-Ho turned to He-Jin with a twinkle in his eye. Want to bet we can do this in under a day? He-Jin checked the seals on her boots one last time and adjusted her pack. That's not really a fair bet. We both know we can. She paused, then smiled. But I bet I can identify more edible plants than you. You're on, Ji-Ho laughed. Just remember what happened in the Rockies with those berries. That was one time, He-Jin protested as they stepped into the airlock, and I maintain that they looked exactly like blueberries. The massive door sealed behind them with a hiss, as the atmosphere began to change, preparing them for the conditions inside the dome. Both humans were already planning their route through the sectors. To them, this wasn't just a survival course. It was a chance to show the galaxy what humans could do. In the control room above, General Kexfora watched the monitors with all three eyes wide open. He had a strange feeling that he was about to witness something that would change the Academy forever. He just wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. Sir, one of his assistants called out, their vital signs are stable. In fact, they appear to be excited. The general's scales shifted to a deep blue of resignation. Alert all sector monitoring stations. Something tells me we're going to be very busy today. As the inner airlock door opened, He-Jin and Ji-Ho stepped forward into what the galaxy considered a death trap, but to them felt oddly like home. The challenge had begun, and Earth's first cadets at the Galactic Military Academy were ready to show the universe what it meant to be a Deathworlder. The control room of the Galactic Military Academy's survival dome was usually a quiet place. Most days, the monitoring staff would watch cadets slowly make their way through the first sector, carefully testing each step. Today was different. Sir, a junior officer called out, his tentacles writhing in distress. The humans have already covered 2 kilometers. General Kexfora rushed to the main display screen. It had been only 2 hours since the human cadets entered the dome. The tracking dots showing He-Jin and Ji-Ho's positions were moving at what seemed like impossible speeds across the map. Show me the camera feed, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing He-Jin and Ji-Ho moving through the toxic swamps of Sector 1. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. He-Jin paused near a cluster of what the Academy called death flowers, plants that released nerve toxins strong enough to paralyze most species. She pulled out her scanner and checked the readings. Hey, Ji-Ho, she called out. These are almost exactly like the flowers we have back home. Same toxin family as poison ivy, just stronger. Jai-Ho looked up from where he was setting up a simple but effective shelter. Really? That's convenient. We can use them for the outer barrier like we did in basic training. In the control room, one of the medical officers fainted. There, they're touching the death flowers, another officer whispered. And they're alive. General Kexfora watched as Ho-Jin carefully harvested several of the plants, using them to create a protective circle around their shelter. The humans had turned one of the zone's deadliest hazards into a security measure. Sir, a science officer reported, their vital signs are still normal. If anything, their stress levels indicate they're enjoying themselves. The general's scales shifted to a deep purple of confusion. What about the atmospheric toxins? That's the strange part, sir. They're breathing normally. Their bodies seem to process the toxic elements as if they were natural air components. On the screen, Jai-Ho was now dealing with another deadly challenge, a pack of local predators. Six-legged creatures with acid glands had approached their camp. Instead of panicking, Jai-Ho stood his ground and made himself look bigger, waving his arms and shouting. The creatures, unused to prey that didn't run, quickly backed away. Did he just scare off a pack of acid stalkers? Someone in the control room asked in disbelief. Ho-Jin, Jai-Ho called out after the creatures retreated. These are like those coyotes from back home. All bark, no bite. Ho-Jin laughed as she finished securing their shelter. At least these ones don't steal your food when you're not looking. The shelter itself was another source of amazement for the watching aliens. Instead of using the standard survival pods provided by the Academy, the humans had created something new. They had found a natural cave formation and improved it, using local materials to create what looked like a comfortable base camp. Sir, the junior officer spoke again. They've already met the survival requirements for Sector 1. It's only been 2 hours. General Kexfora watched as the humans efficiently organized their camp. They had found water, tested it for safety, set up protection against local wildlife, and even started cataloging edible plants. What took other species days or weeks, they had accomplished in hours. Look at their method, the general said, his scientific curiosity overcoming his shock. They're not just surviving. He searched for the right word, adapting. A new alarm sounded, drawing everyone's attention. The humans were already packing up their essential gear, preparing to move to Sector 2. But they just got there. Someone protested. Ho-Jin and Jai-Ho worked with practiced efficiency, leaving no trace of their camp except for a small marker, a requirement of the course. As they prepared to move, they encountered their first real challenge, a massive creature that the Academy called a mountain crusher, known for its ability to break bones with a single bite. The control room staff held their breath. Even the toughest species knew to avoid mountain crushers. But the humans didn't run. Instead, they did something unexpected. "Hey, big guy," Jai-Ho said softly, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "You're just like the bears back home, aren't you? Big and scary, but not really looking for trouble." Ho-Jin slowly reached into her pack and pulled out some of their ration bars. With careful movements, she tossed one near the creature. The mountain crusher sniffed it, ate it, and after a few tense moments, lumbered away peacefully. Did they just feed a mountain crusher? The junior officer's voice was barely a whisper. "Not just feed it," General Kexfora said, his scales now a mix of colors that indicated complete astonishment. They recognized its behavior patterns and responded appropriately. They treated one of the deadliest creatures in the dome like it was a pet. As Ho-Jin and Jai-Ho continued their journey toward Sector 2, the control room erupted in activity. Officers rushed to prepare the monitoring systems for the next sector, while others frantically updated their species threat assessment protocols. "Sir," the science officer approached General Kexfora with a data pad. "I've been analyzing their approach. They're not just randomly succeeding. They have experience with similar environments and creatures. Their homeworld? It must be. More challenging than this dome. The general finished the thought. Everything we considered deadly, they treat as normal. Every survival challenge we designed, they've already faced naturally. He paused, watching the humans efficiently navigate through what was supposed to be lethal terrain. Contact the Academy Board. They need to see this. Meanwhile, He-Jin and Ji-Ho reached the border of Sector 2. They paused briefly to check their equipment and share some water. "This is fun," He-Jin said, checking her map. "Reminds me of that training course in the Amazon, but with better weather." Ji-Ho nodded, adjusting his pack. "And no mosquitoes. Though I kind of missed the challenge of the bears. That mountain crusher was pretty gentle compared to the grizzlies we trained with." In the control room, General Kexfora made a mental note to research these grizzlies that made mountain crushers seem gentle. He had a feeling that the Academy's understanding of what constituted a survival challenge was about to change dramatically. As the humans entered Sector 2, the general realized something else. They weren't just completing the course. They were rewriting it. Every survival technique they demonstrated, every challenge they overcame, was being recorded and would be studied by future generations of cadets. "Send word to all sector monitoring stations," he ordered. "Tell them to record everything. We're not just watching cadets complete a survival course. We're watching history being made." The humans, unaware of the chaos they were causing in the control room, continued their journey. To them, it was just another day of training. To the watching galaxy, it was a revelation about what it truly meant to be a species from a death world. 4 hours into the survival course, General Kexfora faced a new crisis. The Academy Board had assembled an emergency meeting, and the general's display screen showed 12 of the most distinguished military leaders in the galaxy, all demanding explanations at once. "They've cleared 3 sectors already," High Commander Zix asked, his crystalline form flickering with disbelief. "That's impossible." "Not for them," General Kexfora replied, his scales a steady blue of resignation. "Let me show you the latest footage." The feed showed He-Jin and Ji-Ho approaching the infamous acid lakes of Sector 3. These lakes had stopped countless cadets in their tracks. The acidic water could dissolve protective gear in minutes. Most species took weeks to find safe paths around them. He-Jin knelt by the lake's edge, carefully testing the water with a sensor. "Ji-Ho, come look at this. It's just like the hot springs in Yellowstone. The pH is nearly the same." Ji-Ho joined her, pulling out some simple materials from his pack. "Perfect. We can use the same crossing technique we learned from the park rangers." The watching board members stared in silence as the humans quickly constructed simple but effective acid-resistant platforms using local materials and their basic gear. They'd moved across the acid lake with practiced ease, using techniques that none of the Academy's instructors had ever considered. "Are they teaching each other songs while they work?" one board member asked in confusion. Indeed, the humans were singing something they called hiking songs as they worked. Their vital signs showed no signs of stress or fear. "Sir," a junior officer rushed into the control room. "The other cadets are requesting permission to observe the humans' techniques. They say it's revolutionary." The general looked at the secondary monitors. Along the outer edges of the dome, other cadets who hadn't yet started their survival courses were gathering to watch. The humans' methods were already changing how the Academy thought about survival training. "Look there," High Commander Zix pointed at the screen. The humans had encountered one of the course's most dangerous challenges, a nest of vapor vipers, creatures that could turn the air around them into poison. Instead of retreating, He-Jin and Ji-Ho studied the creatures from a safe distance. They took notes and made careful observations. "These are like the rattlesnakes back home," Ji-Ho said, sketching something in his notebook. "See how they coil before releasing their vapor. Same warning signs." He-Jin nodded, already adjusting their route. "We can use that sound to avoid them. Just like the ranger taught us in desert survival training." The board members watched in amazement as the humans not only avoided the deadly creatures, but used their presence to map safer paths through the sector. They were turning every deadly challenge into an advantage. "General," a different board member spoke up, "these humans, they keep referring to similar challenges on their home world. What kind of planet produces beings like this?" Before the general could answer, new alarms sounded throughout the control room. Hajin and Jiho had reached one of the course's most difficult obstacles, the Crystal Canyon. Its walls absorbed heat from living beings, quickly causing hypothermia in most species. The fastest crossing on record had taken 12 days. The humans studied the canyon for exactly 3 minutes. "It's like that ice crevasse from winter training," Hei-jin said, pulling equipment from her pack. "Remember how we handled the temperature problem?" Jiho grinned, already setting up their gear. "Layer system and constant movement. Keep the blood flowing. Maintain core temperature." The watching aliens were treated to a display of what the humans called mountaineering techniques. Hajin and Jiho moved through the canyon with remarkable speed, using simple tools and body movements that the Academy's experts immediately began documenting. "Their core temperatures are dropping," a medical officer reported, "but they're compensating for it. Their bodies are actually adapting to the cold." "Of course they are," General Kexfora said quietly. "Look at their techniques. These aren't just random survival skills. This is their species' accumulated knowledge of surviving in extreme conditions. Everything we thought was impossible, they've already done before." As if to prove his point, Hei-jin and Jiho emerged from the Crystal Canyon in just under 2 hours. They immediately began helping each other warm up using simple exercises they called jumping jacks and sharing hot drinks from their thermal containers. "That was refreshing," Jiho said, stretching his arms. "Though I missed the view from the real mountains back home." Hei-jin checked their map while sipping her hot drink. "At this rate, we'll clear the next sector before lunch. Want to race?" The board members watched in stunned silence as the humans continued their journey, treating the most dangerous survival course in the galaxy like a pleasant training exercise. "General," High Commander Zix said finally, "I believe we need to completely revise our understanding of species classifications. These humans, they're not just surviving our course. They're showing us that everything we thought we knew about survival needs to be reconsidered." In the dome, Hajin and Jiho had started teaching some of their techniques to a group of alien observers who had been given permission to watch from a safe distance. The humans drew diagrams in the dirt, demonstrated basic survival skills, and patiently explained concepts that their species had learned over thousands of years of surviving on Earth. "The most important thing," Hei-jin told the fascinated observers, "is to understand your environment. Every challenge has a solution if you know how to look for it. And always be prepared," Jiho added, showing them his modified survival pack. "On Earth, we have a saying, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle." The alien cadets recorded everything, their various sensory organs fixed on the humans with intense interest. The Academy's teaching protocols were being rewritten in real time. General Kexfora watched all of this with a growing sense of revelation. His scales had settled into a new color, one that reflected both amazement and respect. "Send a message to Earth's military command," he ordered. "Tell them we request permission to learn more about their survival training programs. And," he paused, watching Hei-jin and Jiho efficiently prepare for their next challenge, "ask them if they would consider sending us some instructors." The humans, still unaware of the profound impact they were having on galactic military doctrine, continued their journey through the dome. To them, it was just another day of putting their training to use. To the watching galaxy, it was the beginning of a new era in survival training. 16 hours into the survival course, the Galactic Military Academy was in a state of organized chaos. News of the humans' performance had spread throughout the facility, drawing observers from every department. The main control room had been transformed into an emergency command center, with experts from various fields analyzing every move the human cadets made. General Kexfora stood at the center of it all, his scales now a steady shade of deep green that indicated intense focus. The main screen showed He-Jin and Ji-Ho entering Sector 8, an area that simulated extreme weather conditions. "Sir," the chief weather officer reported, "we're running the standard storm sequence. Category 6 wind forces with toxic rain." The general nodded, watching as the artificial storm system activated. Most species would seek immediate shelter from such conditions. The humans, however, had a different response. "Finally, some interesting weather," Ji-Ho said, adjusting his gear. "Reminds me of monsoon season back home." He-Jin was already setting up what they called a weather station, using basic equipment from their packs. "The wind patterns are pretty regular. We can use them to cover more ground if we time it right." The watching aliens stared in disbelief as the humans not only continued their progress through the storm, but actually used the severe weather to their advantage. They had developed a system of moving with the wind currents while avoiding the worst of the toxic rain. Their environmental suits should have failed by now, a technical officer noted, checking his readings for the third time. "But they've modified them using local materials. They're improving our equipment." In the observation area, a group of Academy engineers were frantically taking notes. The humans' simple but effective modifications to standard survival gear were revolutionizing their understanding of equipment design. A new alert sounded, drawing everyone's attention. The humans had encountered one of the dome's most feared challenges, a quantum quicksand pit. These areas were known for breaking down matter at the molecular level. "He-Jin, look." Ji-Ho pointed at some small creatures moving near the pit's edge. "They're using the solid spots to cross, just like those mountain goats we studied." He-Jin nodded, already mapping out a path. "Nature always shows the best way. Let's follow their trail." The Academy's physics experts watched in amazement as the humans used their observation of local wildlife to safely navigate what was supposed to be an impossible obstacle. They weren't just surviving. They were demonstrating principles that the Academy had never considered. "General," High Commander Zix's voice came through the communication system. "The board has reached a decision. We're implementing immediate changes to the Academy's training protocols. These humans aren't just passing our course. They're showing us how limited our understanding has been." General Kexfora watched as He-Jin and Ji-Ho set up another camp, this time taking time to document their methods for the benefit of future cadets. They had begun recording what they called survival tips, using their standard-issue communication devices. Tip number 15. He-Jin spoke into her recorder. "Always observe local wildlife. They've already figured out the best ways to survive in their environment." Tip 16. Ji-Ho added, "Most predators aren't actually looking for a fight. Stand your ground, make yourself look big, and show them you're not worth the trouble." The control room staff had started compiling these tips into what would later become the Academy's new survival manual. The humans' practical knowledge was filling gaps in their training that no one had even realized existed. "Sir," a junior officer called out, "you need to see this. They're approaching the Mirror Desert." The general's scales shifted to a pale yellow of concern. The Mirror Desert was one of the dome's newest additions, designed to create psychological challenges through light-based illusions. No species had yet found a reliable way to navigate it. But once again, the humans surprised them. He-Jin pulled out a simple compass, while Ji-Ho used basic tools to track their position using the artificial sun's movement. "Just like that sandstorm in the Sahara training," He-Jin said, checking their bearing. "When you can't trust your eyes, trust your instruments." "And when instruments fail," Ji-Ho added, "there's always the old ways. The sun, the stars, the wind patterns." They moved through the Mirror Desert with remarkable efficiency, using what they called desert survival techniques that had been developed over thousands of years on Earth. The Academy psychologists were particularly interested in their mental resilience to the illusions. Their brains, one specialist noted, They're not just resisting the illusions. They're actively analyzing them, learning from them. Every challenge we present becomes a learning opportunity for them. In the dome, He-Jin and Ji-Ho had started teaching some of their techniques to a group of alien cadets who were observing from the desert's edge. They demonstrated simple but effective methods for navigation, water conservation, and heat management. Your body is your most important survival tool, He-Jin explained to the fascinated observers. Learn to read its signals, understand its needs, and trust its capabilities. General Kexfora made another note in his rapidly filling datapad. The humans weren't just completing the course, they were transforming it into an educational opportunity for everyone involved. Send word to all training facilities, he ordered. Tell them to prepare for major curriculum changes. What we're learning today will reshape survival training throughout the galaxy. As the day continued, the control room received messages from military academies across the galaxy, all requesting access to the footage of the humans' performance. What had started as a standard survival course had become a landmark event in galactic military history. Sir, the chief medical officer approached with a new report. We've been analyzing their physiological responses. Their species, they're not just adapted to survive in harsh conditions. They're adapted to thrive in them. Every challenge makes them stronger. The general looked at his main screen, where He-Jin and Ji-Ho were efficiently preparing for their next sector. They're not just survivors, he said quietly. They're teachers, and we have much to learn. In the dome, the humans continued their journey, unaware that they were rewriting the galaxy's understanding of survival. To them, it was just another day of putting their training to use. To everyone watching, it was the beginning of a new era in galactic military education. 23 hours into what was supposed to be a year-long survival course, General Kexfora stood before the assembled academy board. The main display showed He-Jin and Ji-Ho approaching the final sector of the dome. No one in the room spoke. They were all too busy watching history unfold. They will reach the exit point in approximately 40 minutes, the general reported, his scales showing a complex pattern of colors that reflected pride, amazement, and lingering disbelief. They have not only survived every challenge we presented, but have improved upon our existing protocols. On the screen, the human cadets were dealing with the dome's final challenge, the Omega Zone. This sector combined every hostile element from the previous areas into one overwhelming environment. It had been designed to be impossible to cross in less than 10 days. He-Jin and Ji-Ho studied the zone from a safe vantage point, making notes and comparing observations. It's like they took all our favorite training grounds and put them in one place, Ji-Ho said, checking his equipment one last time. Mountains, desert, swamp, and toxic atmosphere all at once. He-Jin nodded, already plotting their route, just like that combined environment course back home. Remember what our instructor said. The more challenges you face at once, the more tools you have to work with. Ji-Ho finished the quote. They shared a knowing smile before beginning their final approach. In the control room, the monitoring staff watched in amazement as the humans began moving through the Omega Zone. Instead of being overwhelmed by the combined challenges, they used each hazard to counter another. They used the toxic geysers to power their movement through strong wind currents. They turned the hostile wildlife into guides for safe paths through unstable terrain. Their approach is revolutionary, High Commander Zix observed. They don't see individual problems to overcome. They see an entire environment to understand and use. The general nodded, watching as He-Jin used the extreme temperature differences to create safe water collection points. They're not just surviving. They're showing us how limited our thinking has been. Everything we thought was a deadly obstacle, they see as a potential resource. The Academy's teaching staff had been recording every technique, every innovation the humans demonstrated. What had started as a survival test had turned into the most comprehensive reform of military training protocols in galactic history. Sir, a junior officer reported, the human cadets have begun their final approach to the exit. But there's something else you should see. The secondary monitors showed something remarkable. Along the observation corridors that ringed the dome, hundreds of alien cadets and instructors had gathered. They were watching, learning, and taking notes as Ho-Jin and Ji-Ho completed their journey. "Look at that," Ji-Ho said, noticing their audience as they navigated the final challenges. "Should we give them one last demonstration?" Ho-Jin smiled and pulled out their documentation equipment. "Let's make it count. Show them everything we've learned." For their final crossing, the humans put on what could only be described as a masterclass in survival techniques. They demonstrated each method clearly, explaining their actions through their communication devices for the benefit of future students. They showed how to read terrain, how to understand animal behavior, how to work with rather than against environmental challenges. In the control room, General Kexfora made a decision. "Open a communication channel to the observation areas," he ordered. "Let everyone hear what they're teaching us." The next 20 minutes became the most attended survival class in Academy history. Cadets and instructors from every species listened as the humans shared knowledge that their species had gathered through millennia of surviving on what the galaxy classified as a death world. Finally, Ho-Jin and Ji-Ho reached the dome's exit. They had completed a year-long course in 23 hours and 42 minutes. But more importantly, they had transformed the Academy's understanding of what was possible. As the airlock cycled open, they were met with something unprecedented: applause. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy, using whatever appendages they had, created a thunderous welcome. General Kexfora stepped forward, his scales now showing the deep gold color of highest respect. "Cadets Ho-Jin and Ji-Ho," he said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Military Academy, I must apologize." The humans exchanged confused looks. "Apologize, sir?" Ho-Jin asked. "Yes," the general continued. "We designed this course thinking we were testing the limits of survival capability. Instead, you have shown us that we barely understood what survival truly means. We called your world a death world, but now we understand. It was your world that taught you to live." High Commander Zix stepped forward. "The Academy Board has reached a unanimous decision. We are establishing a new department, Advanced Environmental Training, and we want you both to help design it." Ji-Ho looked at Ho-Jin, then back at the assembled aliens. "Sir, we would be honored. But first, may we suggest something?" "Of course," the general said. "Don't call them death worlds anymore," Ho-Jin said. "Call them challenge worlds, because that's what they really are, places that teach you to be stronger, smarter, and more adaptable." The general's scales shifted through a rainbow of colors before settling on a new pattern that the Academy's skenobiologists would later classify as enlightened. "A wise suggestion," he said, "and the first of many lessons we hope to learn from Earth's cadets." As the ceremony concluded and the various species began to disperse, Ho-Jin turned to Ji-Ho with a grin. "So, what should we do with the rest of our year?" Ji-Ho laughed. "Well, I heard they have some interesting training courses on the volcanic moons of Centauri Prime. Apparently, they're impossibly dangerous." "Perfect," Ho-Jin said. "But first, let's get some real food. All this survival training makes me hungry." In the days that followed, the story of the human cadets spread throughout the galaxy. But it wasn't just a story about completing an impossible course. It was a story about understanding, adaptation, and the remarkable capacity of life to thrive in even the harshest conditions. The humans hadn't just survived the dome. They had shown the galaxy a new way to look at survival itself. And in the Academy's records, a new note was added to the classification of Earth: home to beings who don't just survive challenges, they teach others how to master them.